Hello and good afternoon. We will present our topic titled Emotional, Behavioral, Language, and Communication. Chloe Bernice Fababair will discuss the emotional and behavioral and the historical context of EBD. And I, Ronami Villanueva, will discuss the EBD through language and communication definition. And Shine Rada will discuss historical context and the language communication disorder.
So today we are going to talk about what is emotions and what is behavior. First, we are going to tackle about emotions. Emotions are not conscious. They are reactions produced in your body that often arise from experiences, thoughts, and memories. There has been some debate in research over the number of types of emotions. Some researchers have found over 27 emotions. However, 6 emotions are often cited as the most common, including the following. So, you will see the 6 most common emotions. First is happiness, surprise, fear, disgust, and anger, and sadness. First, we're going to talk about happiness. Happiness. This emotion is associated with feelings of joy, contentment, and well being. It often leads to smiling, laughter, and a positive outlook on life. The next one is surprise. Surprise occurs when something unexpected happens. It often leads to a brief state of astonishment or amazement, followed by other emotions depending on the context. The third one is fear. Fear is a reaction to perceived danger or threat. It triggers the body's fight or flight response and can be essential for survival. The fourth one is disgust. Disgust is the emotion response to something unpleasant or offensive, such as bad smell, taste, or a morally objectionable situation. The fifth one is anger. Anger involves a strong feeling of displeasure, irritation, or rage. It can manifest as a response to perceived threats or injustices. The last one is sadness. Sadness is characterized by feelings of sorrow, unhappiness, and grief. It can result from loss, disappointment, or difficult life events. So we are done now in the 6 most common emotions. So here is the next one, behavior. Because your emotions create a physical response within your mind and your feelings are conscious, they can impact your behavior in some cases. People believe behaviors are justified because of the intensity of their emotions. They may struggle to understand that behavior is a choice that does not have to follow an emotion. For example, when someone is experiencing rage, breaking an item in response is a choice. Instead of breaking an item, healthy individuals may choose to partake in healthy behavior, like taking a break from the conversation that is causing rage. So, we are done now talking about emotions and behavior. So, let's jump to historical context of EBD. The first one, people with emotional or behavioral disorder have been recognized throughout time. However, their care and treatment was usually neither good nor humane. Second one, in 1547, Saint Mary of Bethlehem in London, also called Bedlam, the first institution for people with emotional or behavioral disorder, is established. Third one, in 1792, Philippe Pinel, a French psychiatrist, orders humanitarian reform. Fourth, in 1700 to 1800, Benjamin Rush, the father of American psychiatry, proposed humane methods for caring for children with emotional or behavioral disorder. The last one is in late 1800s, the first public school class opens for children with emotional or behavioral disorder. So here is the 5 historical contexts of EVD that we have found. I hope you guys learn and understand something about emotions and behavior. and the historical context of it. Thank you.
Emotional and behavioral disorder, or what we call EBD. What is EBD? An ability to build or maintain satisfaction interpersonal relationship with the peers or teachers. For preschool age children, this would include other care provides. So, meaning that is a failure to connect with others. Next, an ability to learn which cannot be adequately explained by intellectual, sensor, or health factors. Next, consistent or chronicle inappropriate type of behavior or feelings under normal conditions. It also displays pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. It also displays tendency to develop physical symptoms like pain, visible fears associated with personal or school problems. So here's the video of EBD in children.
Behavioral and emotional disorders in children. Childhood mental and developmental disorders encompass neurodevelopmental, emotional, and behavioral disorders that have broad and serious adverse impacts on psychological and social well-being. Children with these disorders require significant additional support from families and educational systems. The disorders frequently persist into adulthood. These children are more likely to experience a compromised developmental trajectory, with increased need for medical and disability services, as well as increased risk of contact with law enforcement agencies. The discussion to the following 5 conditions: childhood anxiety disorders, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, conduct disorder, autism, and intellectual disability, intellectual developmental disorder. Anxiety disorders are characterized by excessive or inappropriate fear, with associated behavioral disturbances that impair functioning, APA 2013. Children with anxiety disorders have clinical symptoms, such as excessive anxiety, severe physiological anxiety symptoms, behavioral disturbances, such as avoidance of feared objects, and associated distress or impairment. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by inattention and disorganization, with or without hyperactivity impulsivity, causing impairment of functioning, APA 2013. ADHD persists into adulthood in approximately 20% of individuals, Paula Road 2007. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by severe impairment in reciprocal social interactions and communication skills, as well as the presence of restricted and stereotypical behaviors. Intellectual disability is a generalized disorder that is characterized by significantly impaired cognitive functioning and deficits in 2 or more adaptive behaviors. These issues are exacerbated when investigating mental disorders in children, particularly in LMICs where other health concerns, such as infectious diseases, are priorities. Although regional differences may exist, the lack of data makes them difficult to ascertain. The 12-month global prevalence of childhood mental disorders in 2010. ADHD, conduct disorder, and autism were more prevalent in males. Females were more likely to suffer from anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders and ADHD were more common in adolescents compared with such as avoidance of feared objects, and associated
So as we see on that video that there are many disorders on our emotional and behavioral such as ADHD, autism, eating disorder, anxiety disorder, learning disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, PANDAS, persistent depressive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Hindi lang basta-basta mga ADHD, meron din yung mga anxiety kasi hindi lang yun yung ay, so madami ding causes ang EBD na parang biological factors like genetics, 'di ba? Brain damage or dysfunction, malnourished or allergy, temperament and physical illness or family factors like that, or family interaction or family influence on school such as success and failure and internal pressures. So, next, language and communication. First, what is language? Language is a system of knowledge, a medium for thought and social interaction, meaning that is interaction between two people. And communication is the process of passing information like sending and understanding, receiving the same from one person to another through verbal and nonverbal means. So, meaning like sending or receiving some information to one another.
So here it comes for the historical context of language and communication disorder. Ancient beliefs in ancient civilizations such as Egypt and Greece, language and communication disorders were often attributed to supernatural causes or seen as a punishment from the gods. Middle Ages, during this period, little understanding of these disorders existed and individuals with such conditions were often stigmatized or isolated. Renaissance: some progress was made in understanding speech and language disorders during the Renaissance, with early attempts at speech therapy and education. 19th century. The 1800s saw significant advancement in the study of speech and language disorders, with pioneers like Alexander Graham Bell working on techniques for teaching the deaf to communicate. In 20th century, the 20th century marked significant develops in speech-language pathology as a field. The study of aphasia, or language impairment, gained prominence and therapies for various communication disorders were developed. Late 20th century, research in genetics and neuroscience provided new insights into causes of language disorders, including the role of genetics and brain structure. So, modern time. In today's generation, the study and treatment of language and communication disorders have advanced considerably. Speech-language pathologists and researchers use evidence-based practices to assess and help individuals with a wide range of disorder, including autism spectrum disorders, stuttering, aphasia, and more. We can see that if there was a record, then how much more so now that we are here in a crazy world. But we need to remember that we need to remember that everything problem has a solution. So we can see the difference between then and now on how to handle those people, children with disabilities nowadays. It is faster to handle because of the modern technology. So I've said earlier that we are here in a crazy world. So there are so many disabilities, there are so many sickness, but we need to remember every problem has a solution. So let's go for the next topic. So, what is language communication disorder? So here it comes. Communication disorder. Communication disorder are a group of conditions involving problems with receiving, processing, sending, and comprehending various forms of information and communication, including concepts, verbal, nonverbal, graphic language, speech. They can result from any condition that affects hearing, speech, and language to the extent that it can disrupt a person's ability to communicate properly. A communication disorder can manifest early in a child development, or a medical condition can cause it to develop at an older age. So, meaning that communication disorders affect a person's ability to detect, receive, process, and comprehend the concepts or symbols necessary for communication. It can affect also in hearing, language, and speech. So there are some examples of communication disorders. So hearing disorders and deafness. So we are all familiar that kind of disabilities. So voice problems such as dysphonia or those caused by cleft lip, speech problems like stuttering, developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, brain injury, kasama po siya sa communication disorder, and stroke. And next, for our language disorder. Language disorder impair a person's ability to comprehend or use spoken, written, or other symbol system. They may involve problems with phonology. This term refers to the sound that make up language system and the roles governing sound combination. So, next is morphology. Morphology describes the structure and construction of words. Syntax. People who have difficulties with syntax may make errors relating to the relationship, order, and combination of words in sentences. Language content. This term refers to the meaning of words and sentences or semantics. Language function. Language function means using and understanding language based on interactional context and beyond its literal meaning. So meaning po, language disorder is defined as impairment of expression and comprehension because of a disruption in the acquisition of vocabulary words, word endings, and sentence structure. So, here are some examples po of language disorder. Uh, Dysarthria, orofacial myofunctional disorder. So I'm not familiar with this kind of disorder. And next is speech sound disorder, slattering, voice disorder, aphasia, and selective mutism. So there are a lot of language disorder. But language disorder is the meaning that the child may be unable to join words correctly into sentences. The child may have a small vocabulary or use words incorrectly. He may speak using short phrases and leave out small words such as is, the, or the child may say sentences but put them together incorrectly. Uh, I think uh, I've seen this kind of uh, children who have an language disorder. So, so it's not easy to communicate them because you cannot understand them what they're going to say to you. So, but so let's see for our video presentation about language and communication disorder.
DLD stands for Developmental Language Disorder. It's a fairly common problem. It affects about 7% of the population, and the term itself describes a difficulty learning to talk and understand language. The problem is often evident in early childhood, but it follows you into adulthood.
And it fell too hard, it broke.
Even as young children, these people can talk, they can communicate. They would just do so more simply or in a less rich way that you might expect for their age.
And she was like, oh no.
DLD is more common than autism, even though we all have heard about autism, and it's much rarer for people to have heard about DLD. Sometimes when parents become concerned that their child is having a problem, they actually might suspect autism. Sometimes they might suspect attention deficit disorder. It could be developmental language disorder because sometimes it's hard to pull apart the following direction difficulty and the social communication difficulty from the language difficulty. But a speech language pathologist can help with that differential diagnosis.
What?
It's optimal to identify developmental language disorders early in childhood because that's a good window for helping the child to make change and to learn some compensations and some skills. That said, it's never too late. So even as young adults, sometimes people get diagnosed with developmental language disorder for the first time, and oftentimes it makes sense to them. They think back on struggles that they had at school, and it gives them some answers about why school was challenging, and also some strategies about how to learn better.
Mama. Say mama. Yeah.
I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm almost 2 now. Ugh, here we go.
Identify the signs of communication disorders.
So very short video. So
Mama. Say mama. Yeah.
I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm almost 2 now and still not responding. That's one sign of a communication disorder, and delaying treatment can affect my development.
Many parents aren't aware of the early signs of speech, language, and hearing disorders, yet early detection and treatment can improve quality of life.
Say dada.
Ugh, here we go.
Identify the signs of communication disorders.
Mama.